Welcome back to Wizard Jail, a Visionary rewatch podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Patrick Ripoll.
And I'm Gabe Powers, the other host.
Gabe, this is a podcast where we're going back. We're watching the 1980s toy commercial cartoon Visionaries.
Yes.
Produced by Sunbow and Hasbro, the fine people behind G.I. Joe and other television programs that were just laser focused on children to get them to buy plastic shit.
Yeah. Ads within ads.
Yeah. Now, my understanding is this has something to do with like Ronald Reagan deregulating TV in some important way. I don't actually know that whole story.
Yeah,
but
it's always what they bring up. Yeah, there was some sort of deregulation as far as being able to advertise to children was illegal because kids can't understand the difference between entertainment and advertising. And Reagan's people said, that's silly, and deregulated it. And so we got commercials within commercials.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's one of those things where it's like sometimes I will disagree with the law, but I think the law should still be there just because it makes the world a better place.
Yeah.
And so like whatever libertarian instinct I have as far as like, yeah, there shouldn't be laws against like what you can produce artistically for television. There's a lot of adults who also don't know the difference between commercials and entertainment.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to stop them. So, but yeah, maybe we would be a better place if there was more electric companies and less Sky Commanders, which I will, because I know nothing about it and because I think the toys suck so much, Sky Commanders will continue to be my go-to reference for the lowest of the low when it comes to these toy commercial TV shows from the 80s.
Well, and it also lined up with Visionaries. I think it was the exact same year, and it also only ran 13 episodes, so perfect.
Exactly. And also, like Visionaries toys that I look at and I go, ugh, who would?
Oh, and also was only syndicated. I don't think it ever made it to like the big Saturday morning stuff. So
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we last episode we talked a little bit about the history of how the show was made, and we talked about the pilot. This episode we're going to be talking about episode 2, The Dark Hand of Treachery, and episode 3, The Quest for the Dragon's Eye. These are all sort of loosely connected in that episodes 1 and 2 end with cliffhangers and to be continued, but they also are kind of distinct from each other. It doesn't really feel like a clean 3-act story. It's a lot messier than that. What these 3 episodes really are doing, and the way they actually work in concert, is like these are all episodes that are designed to sell you on the Visionaries as a property. Mm-hmm. So episode 1 sets up the world and the premise and the characters. Episode 2, which we're about to talk about, The Dark Hand of Treachery, is very much about like, and here's why these are cool toys. And here's all, and it's like, it's almost less pitching to the audience than it is pitching to executives at Hasbro, that it's just sort of like, and episode 2 is where you are going to start seeing dollar signs because we're just going to keep introducing accessories and toys and like all of their powers, and you'll understand why kids will want to buy them. And then episode 3 is sort of about establishing the cartoon as far as like, this is basically what a story structure of an episode of Visionaries is going to be like. There's going to be battles between the good guys and the bad guys. At some point, they're going to go to Merklin. Merklin's going to say, I can help you, but you have to go fetch this MacGuffin for me. They're going to go do that, bring it back, and then their plot will be wrapped up magically because they were able to get this thing. And then the other thing episode 3 has that will appear a lot is like, it's a lot fuzzier, the good and evil thing. Like there are instances where the Spectral Knights is what they come to call themselves at the end of episode 2. The Spectral Knights and the Darkling Lords are kind of working hand in hand towards the same goal, not just battling each other. And you're going to see different little variations of that as they oppose each other, but then sometimes have to unite for a common good. So these 3 episodes, less of like one story than instead of just like one big pitch, is kind of how I feel about them.
And this sort of thing of like making a movie out of the first 3 episodes was kind of, it became more common, especially for the Disney sequel cartoons. They would often put those out on video as the sequel movie, but it was really just 3 episodes of the show they had already planned.
That's right. I did hear there were some of those shows that were canceled, and then what was sort of salvaged from the canceled products were these direct-to-video sequels. I think there's a Beauty and the Beast one specifically that I'm thinking of.
The one for me was the Emperor's New Groove, because I actually have that on Blu-ray, and the sequel is very clearly 3 episodes of a television show and not these 3 episodes of Visionaries are more of an arcing movie than those 3 episodes of Emperor's New Groove.
And I think first to go back to around this time, I think the first 5 episodes of DuckTales are all kind of one continuous story, setting up everything. But let's get into it.
They've stopped. I wonder what for.
Should I die now, I want all to remember that I have undertaken this deed for love of my master and king, Darkstorm.
You shall live forever in the Hall of Valor, Mordred.
Where's the Hall of Valor?
Quiet, idiot! Catapult him!
The Dark Hand of Treachery, it begins with a recap of the previous episode with clips. And when you're just looking at clips of this show without the context and the pacing and the voice acting and everything, you really do notice that, oh, this is anime. When you're just seeing, Witterclick running past all those, crushing little stone columns and everything, you will immediately be like, oh, okay. Now you can really see it. This is made by TMS in Japan and really does look like anime of the time in a lot of ways. But I can go ahead and recap that first episode too, in case you missed our first episode. A natural disaster in space knocks out all electricity on the planet of Prismos. And after years of barbaric anarchy, the wizard Merklin issues a challenge to all knights to penetrate his Iron Mountain and gain magical powers from the shrine hidden inside. There are 12 knights that succeed. Actually, that is incorrect. There are 14 knights that succeed. God, there are so many characters. There are 14 knights that succeed. 7 good, led by the noble Leoric, and 7 bad, led by the dastardly Darkstorm. We ended episode 1 on a cliffhanger where the Darkling Lord Viralina was trying to trick and rob the good knight Arzon. And this is literally just the very moment after that episode ends, we pick up again. Viralina had tried to trick Arzon by disguising herself as a princess with a full Mission Impossible style face mask in order to get him close and steal his staff of power. And we see them fighting, which is the point where I have to admit I was wrong last episode about, oh yeah, there's 2 girl characters because you can't have girls and boys fighting each other. This episode, and I think in the next episode too, you get a lot of boy-girl violence, and it's not heavily gendered in any way. There's not a moment where someone's like, I don't want to hit you because you're a girl, or instead of fighting back, the opposing knight will dodge an attack or something that you might try to do to get out of the idea of boys and girls fighting each other. Visionaries is a show where they're just nah, they're all knights. They're all going to try to kill each other. And if you have a problem with that, it probably says something sexist about you. So, kudos to Visionaries. I didn't think that they were going to do this because I guess I had forgotten the details because every character looks the same, so I didn't realize.
Yeah.
But he does eventually knock her down, and then that's when the other 3 Darkling Lords who are hiding on a nearby cliff jump down and attack him, and they all battle for a while. He knocks them down. He runs. He eventually gets ambushed by the other Darkling Lords. This is, I guess, the advantage of having teams that are so large, is that you can have all these beats where you just keep introducing more characters. I guess that's actually how most action scenes are paced. It's just we have 14 people. We could just sort of cycle through them as they use their powers. Yeah. And then when they've all done it, the fight scene is over. He takes the form of an eagle to flee, but Kravex takes the form of a Phylot, which is a magical pterodactyl kind of character, that creature that lives on Prismos, and attacks him and brings him back down. And then there's a scene where they're all sort of relishing the good job they did in taking down Arzon, and Viralina is holding the princess face mask, and it looks like a decapitated head. Yeah, because it is. Again, it's so realistic that she's just sort of well, that was all too easy, and she's just holding a severed head is what it looks like.
I want to reiterate that she was given the power of the shark, not the chameleon, even though there is at least one more. I have not completed my rewatch as you did, but there's at least one more instance of her disguising herself. So it's clearly what her specialty is. And then also that she had this whole outfit over her and her bulky armor is very funny to me. It's very Bugs Bunny, changing the dimensions and mass of an object kind of thing.
This is a show that is taking itself seriously, and in fact is often a little too stiff and a little too afraid to be silly, at least until later on in the series when they were sort of sure, oh, actually no one's this is getting canceled, we'll just do whatever. But in these early episodes, it tends to not go into this cartoon logic, but every once in a while some cartoon ass moment will happen, and you'll be like, oh, that's right, this is for kids. This is a little I'm not actually watching like Star Wars Clone Wars or something. I'm watching something that is aimed at a much lower demographic.
Yeah, aimed at morons, you can say it. Or
yeah, this is for the idiots like Gabe Powers.
7-year-old moron dumbass.
Yeah, exactly. So they capture Arzon, and then Darkstorm says, well, if we're going to keep capturing these knights, I'm going to run out of iron for shackles. So he sends Recon and Mordred out to scavenge in the junkyard. Kravex is the one who's the scavenger, but I guess you don't send him because once you send him into a junkyard, he's just going to get distracted in like an American Pickers kind of way, and he's not going to do what you want. So I agree with the strat here, Darkstorm. Like keep Kravex away from that junkyard.
But why send Mordred, who everybody hates, and Kravex is always angry all the time?
I mean, if Kravex is someone you can't control his lust for shiny things, then Mordred is the guy you have the most control over. So. Yeah,
but Mordred has no control over Kravex. I'm overthinking this, which is something I'm going to constantly do. But like, you have to send the mercenary guy. I can't remember his name. Send him. He seems to be the only one Kravex has any respect for. Actually. Recon is sent. Recon. And so Recon has an idea about why these two are sent. He's saying that they're the two that don't have staffs, so they've been relegated to Darkling Lord's grunt work. That's true.
Which is a thing that it would be an interesting setup early on, as there's like a hierarchy among the knights. That doesn't actually become part of the show, especially because they're about to learn what their real powers are.
Right.
But first, Recon makes sure to say to Mordred, once again, our favorite catchphrase, were you born to be a bootlicker, or did you learn it in your early manhood?
If we had magical power staffs, we would not have been relegated to this degrading labor.
But Recon, any work is exalted as long as it is done in the name of the great Darkstorm.
Were you born to be a bootlicker, or did you pick up the trade in your early manhood?
They will not stop calling Mordred a bootlicker. It almost feels like they didn't think they'd be allowed, and then Hasbro said you can use the term bootlicker, and then they were so excited they just like went crazy with it. Like an FX show that they're just like, oh, FX is letting us say shit. We're going to make sure our characters say shit a whole lot.
Yep.
Also, I do think there's a little bit, again, of that gay sexual connotation there of, did you learn it in your early manhood? Mm-hmm. I think they are sort of setting up Mordred to be the sort of sniveling, sycophantic, gay creep sort of stereotype.
Yeah, manhood is a weird word to use there. Your early manhood.
Yeah, early manhood
life.
Is a very strange phrase. Yeah.
Childhood? I don't know. Early manhood. Anyway.
So they can start fighting over this comment. Mordred challenges Recon to a duel, but the brief fight is interrupted when Mordred falls into a ship and it springs to life magically. This is, of course, a world where no technology is supposed to work, but I guess they realize that technology does respond to those with magical powers. So Recon takes the gun. Mordred hops in the cockpit. Merklin had promised them another power in an earlier scene, and now here we are. This vehicle and all the vehicles in this show, again, this is me without my toy brain. I was not a collector of toys. I was not someone who coveted toys or like wanted to get a whole set of anything. And I grew up in the 90s when action figures started to get a little more sophisticated and things were a little bit more like, these are realistic depictions of Star Wars vehicles or aliens figures or stuff like that. Going back and looking at these 80s toys, like this vehicle looks so dumb. It looks so chunky and plastic, and it's covered in all these like really garish colors.
Yeah.
Like just, it seems like really randomly painted. Like there were just, 8 empty spaces that a kid with a fill tool in MS Paint just sort of picked different colors and went blip, 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 blip. Okay, that's my spaceship. And again, there's parts of this show where you're like, oh, what an interesting world, interesting characters. Some of this animation's incredible. I'm getting sucked in a little bit. And then every once in a while, you will be like, by the way, toy commercial. This is a toy commercial. You're not looking at characters. You're looking at action figures. And so whenever I see the vehicles, it annoys me.
Well, and I think that there is a sort of, we keep talking about if this was ever given a reboot, like more beloved shows, they would definitely not fall into a already completed vehicle. They would fall into some sort of car And then they would say, look, I made a car work. And then Darkstorm would be like, oh, let's add a bunch of crazy shit onto it to make it a war vehicle.
Yeah.
Because it's already a weird war vehicle that happens.
This is our dark reboot. So they're going to be driving around like a Mad Max muscle car with spikes and stuff.
Right. That also has the holograms. But like, yeah, they didn't have to retrofit it. It just happens to match the aesthetic that the villains are already going for, which is something I don't think I brought up. Is this show doesn't quite go as literal as Sky Commanders does, but there's a sort of theme in 80s cartoons where bad guys are green and purple and good guys are red and yellow. I don't know where that started, but you kind of see a little bit of that in this. Darkstorm.
I think it's almost like the evil characters are coded as like poisonous in some way.
Yeah.
It's kind of how I've always felt about the green and purple sort of a thing.
Yeah.
They crash land into Darkstorm's castle, and Darkstorm's just immediately excited by a vehicle. He jumps into the cockpit. It does not start. And then Recon says, it appears that any visionary can pilot a vehicle, but Mortrin and I are your only knights who can breathe magic into the metal. And I say, what? Where is he getting that from? How'd he come to that conclusion? That is someone selling toys being like, no, we need to make sure that they all get vehicles eventually.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, okay, throw in the line. We actually built these entire characters around the idea that they're the only ones that can pilot vehicles and they're special, but like, okay, fine. We want kids to be able to put all their toys in all the things. So we're just going to give some knowledge into Recon's head that he would have no purpose of having.
Yeah, and it's very clear in retrospect that reason why they didn't have the staffs is because staffs are expensive to make because they have the holograms. Apparently the holograms were expensive, and that kids at the time would expect a vehicle to come with a figure. That was just the way it was. Except for Ninja Turtles didn't always come with a figure. But anyway, usually because of G.I. Joe, you expected vehicles to come with a figure, so they wrote this thing in so they didn't have to also make a staff. There was no reason really that they had to do that, and they couldn't just, story-wise, give everybody a staff and make it so anybody can control the vehicles. But they decided to make a logical reason for children to play, just to make sure kids aren't playing with too much imagination, that they're sticking to the script.
So now we have vehicles in this world. The capture of the rest of the knights is going to be a lot easier. We see Witterquick getting ambushed by the Darking Lords. He uses his super speed power to evade them, but they're waiting for him at the walls of New Valeric. He tries again to evade with his super speed, but his staff is out of power. This is, this is a show where, like, how powerful are their powers? What is the limits of how they can use them? It varies from story to story. Because these next two episodes are trying to get as many of the powers in all the time, so the audience really understands what everyone can do. Mm-hmm. Every power lasts 5 seconds. It seems like the weakest shit. When I first watched Visionaries, I was sort of like, oh, our heroes are kind of useless. Mm-hmm. Because this episode really makes them seem like just total nincompoops compared to the Darkling Lords. Mm-hmm. So he runs out of super speed, so he tries to turn into a cheetah, which again is just super speed. So I really hate the fact that they're carrying around these big-ass, bulky, dumb staffs, and I really hate that the things the staffs do are just things that are sort of already the things their totems do.
Like, maybe they could have... I just thought of this. Maybe it could have been a Voltron thing where when you use the staff, you just become more. Like, you combine so you become a giant, much faster cheetah, maybe, if you use the staff, and you can only use it once, like a buff in a RPG or whatever. Maybe.
I want it to be nice and clean. I'm just like, give them a weapon that also has the power, and then the power is animal coded. So they have weapons, they have powers, it's post-apocalyptic. Like, that's enough stuff. You don't need more stuff. Unless you're trying to sell toys, in which case you need all the stuff.
So the cheetah power would be that your species is too inbred and susceptible to disease, so you're having to...
Oh no! Oh, that hurts my heart as a big fan of the Disney movie Cheetah from the late 80s. That makes me sad to hear. But the cheetah speed is not necessarily faster than these vehicles, so they blast at him. And it appears to explode him, and there's an act break. Is Witterquick dead? And then we come back from commercial to learn, no, he's fine.
He's okay.
But then they fight him again, and then they knock him out. There's a cool shot where Darkstorm is mocking him, and we get this shot of the three suns lined up behind him. Again, the reason the skies and all the colors in this show look so crazy is because Prismos is a world that has three garish primary color suns, and that kind of gives them license to make anything look like anything. We now jump to a different scene where Cryotech is walking along some glaciers, and he gets jumped by a knight who's revealed to be Galadriel. There's like kind of a little sexual tension there as she jumps on top of him, and they lie together a little bit.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. It's steamy.
And she even says, "I just wanted to see you one more time before I return to Androsia," which I think is her city. Or their city, maybe. This is, again, they're all knights who came from all over the world, and they sort of only decide to form the Spectral Knights at the end of this episode. So at this point, you have Leoric, who's the leader, and a couple of the guys who already knew him from being part of his kingdom. And then we're going to add some more people who weren't already part of his kingdom.
Who looked at Leoric and said, wow, this man is a leader of men. And
they looked at his mustache, and that's all they had to see.
They're like,
I would die for this man. So maybe it's implying that like her and Cryotech come from the same place, and there's this sort of romantic tension between them. We are going to see a later episode where there is a love triangle involving these two, and not Cryotech, but there's another knight that in the comics it's sort of implied that she sleeps with him, which is interesting. We'll get to that when we get to the comics.
There's a lot of room for shipping here and for really pushing this kind of stuff in this reboot that's never going to happen.
This is one of those things where it's like, okay, well, Galadriel has, she does things. She's like often coded as smart. In this scene, Cryotech is like, oh, only you could have snuck up on me. So it's like, she's very like resourceful and crafty and very skilled. Like, they're not just making her like be this sort of sex bot who's there to be desired by all the other knights. She is sort of an equal knight. At the same time, when you have a token female, you really run into problems whenever you try to do romantic subplots, because all you can do is everyone wants the one woman in the kingdom.
And then you end up with like the freaks that have all these theories about like the Smurfs and how Smurfette is the only girl, so she must be birthing all the other Smurfs. Like, it's something that these toy companies didn't think of, how people are freaks and are going to come up with really gross backstories as to how these one-woman societies work. But in a reboot, you can make her into what's the character from the Hunger Games?
Katniss.
You can make her a Katniss, where she has her pick of these wonderful men, and then the young women in the audience can imprint on her in that way.
I mean, honestly, this might be pushing it too far. This might be going past Hunger Games, closer to Andor territory, but I did start reading the recent Image comic book series on The Mummy, which is, they have a whole series of Universal horror sort of reimaginings. And the Mummy one is a pretty accurate recreation of the 30s movie, except it's entirely from the female lead's perspective. And like, what does it feel like to have this sort of ancient personality of this dead priestess inside of you, and like, how do men treat her, and like, how is she sort of used as an object, and how does she feel about her position between the Western and Egyptian worlds and all these sort of things, which is all also there in the 30s movie, but it's just the comic is squarely in her head and only concerned about her feelings. And so like, in my mind, I'm like, you do a reboot of this and it's just all about how Galadriel has to face the very banal sexism of the Spectral Knights, and it's just all from her perspective, because it's it's a reboot in the 2020, so it's going to be from the female lead's perspective, and it's going to quote unquote say something about sexism or whatever.
Yeah.
So
no, I'm with it. I know you're joking, but I'm not. I'm serious.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the final end result. After this series is done, we're going to do a new podcast series where we literally just record ourselves writing out scripts for a reboot. Yuck. First thing I'm doing is like putting in the show Bible, their vehicles can't look like toys.
Their vehicles have to look like shit in a cool way.
Exactly. So in this tender moment, Cryotech and Galadriel get ambushed. Cryotech uses his archer magic power to fire an arrow at them, but it's blocked because Lexor has an invulnerability magic power. And Cryotech says, "That was my one arrow," which again, just like, these powers really seem useless at this point. They're going to seem cooler later, but right now you're like, Cryotech, you suck. So Cryotech's like, look, I'll distract them. You escape and warn the rest of the knights. When they attacked them earlier, they were dropping bombs and it blew a hole in the glacier. So you get this sort of like ice fishing kind of water hole in the middle of this glacier. And that's the hole that she jumps through and turns into a dolphin to swim away. So I do like that bit of continuity there. There's a little bit of thought towards the action that you don't necessarily expect from this kind of show. So she does that. He turns into a bear and attacks. But again, he is a bear for 6 seconds and then he has to turn back into a person and then they jump him. Some of the bear multiplayer fighting is a little better than the action before, but right now we're not really getting into like the really cool animation or interesting big scale action that the show can achieve. These little fights are kind of whatever. Virulina, of course, is sent after Galadriel because Galadriel is the dolphin and Virulina's the shark. But Galadriel hands Virulina's ass to her. Darkstorm chews her out, and Virulina pulls the, well, maybe I didn't even want to catch her in the first place, which, like, I don't think anyone's ever bought that one. Darkstorm's like, you know what? I'm glad you don't have a power staff because you don't deserve one. And just really catty. And then she's like, I will neither forgive nor forget this. So instantly we're already like, these fuckers, they're evil and they hate each other.
Yeah.
This is the good thing about people who truly are immoral and wicked in their hearts, is that they have no loyalty to each other. The fascists expect you to have loyalty to them, but they sell each other out.
Yeah.
That is a thing to that is a thought to maybe meditate on and comfort yourself as our times grow darker.
I've been doing it constantly.
So now we go to Leoric and Farrell. They're at the round table in New Valeric, and they are just like pitching little tales of glory from Iron Mountain to these random soldiers. And I'm just thinking about like every bad retail job I had where the manager was a blowhard and you had to listen to all their shitty stories. It's like, these are your subjects. You rule them. Like, they have to pretend to be interested in your stupid story where you're like, by the way, Farrell smelled his way there. And they're like, we know Farrell smelled his way there. But Galadriel shows up. She tells him what's happened. They figure, oh, there's some other knights who haven't shown up. Probably they're also kidnapped. They don't know what to do because it could be a trap. So Leor consults his Staff of Wisdom. And if you thought that the people's powers were useless before, his Staff of Wisdom says, become one with the circle of light. And then just blinks off. It's like, all right, bye.
And the other knights are like, huh, wow, I think your thing sucks or it's broken. Or
Here's a little test. Does your sage wisdom, if you add the phrase in bed, does it work? Then that's not sage wisdom. That's a fortune cookie. And I, just speaking for myself, I try to become one with the circle of light in bed constantly. So I think that kind of definitively proves the Staff of Wisdom not so great. Leor kind of got great genes as far as mustache hair, but he did not get the best staff out of the light. These what do they call them? The
Spectral Knights.
Spectral Knights. There's like 5 different names for these characters.
Yeah, I think Spectral Knights is what was on the toys, so that's like the official is what we'll say.
In my notes, I call them Visionaries. I call them Knights of the Magical Light. I just call them Knights, and I call them Spectral Knights, and they're all interchangeable as far as I know. I mean, that's fine. You know, Batman has 15 nicknames. That's also, you can call him the Cape Crusader or the World's Greatest Detective or whatever. So they figure we're going to be attacked now because our numbers are dwindled. This is probably when Darkstorm and his cronies are going to attack. Let's prepare our defenses. The Darkling Lords do show up. They catapult Mordred over the castle walls and send him with a message demanding surrender. The Spectral Knights go, nah. And then Mordred's like, oh, okay. How am I getting back? And they just port to a catapult and he gets catapulted back. There's a lot of bad humor in this show. That joke is so fucking funny. Yeah. That's a very good joke.
The absolute disrespect towards Mordred, like, that's definitely the writers going, oh man, we should do something even worse to Mordred this episode.
I feel like the best Visionary Knights Visionaries has to offer in terms of humor. It does sort of remind you of Futurama, and that is a total Futurama joke.
Yeah.
You can definitely see Kip being catapulted back.
Yes, sir.
Very good joke. Now, this angers, of course, the Darkling Lord. So Cinder uses his destruction power to become this giant, awesome kaiju.
Yes.
He's like kind of an orc. He's kind of a goblin. He's got horns and fur and pointy teeth. It is a very original character design. I think it looks cool. And again, like the scale of him becoming this 70-foot monster just tearing down an entire castle and all the blocks flying apart and everything. This is where you're like, oh yeah, Visionaries is an anime. This fucking rules.
I think he reminds me of like, he looks like a boss at the end of a Ghosts and Goblins level to me. Is it? But
yeah. This is definitely of the character design of like these 80s RPGs. I think 87, like maybe Dragon Warrior or Dragon Quest existed at this point. Certainly some of the wizardry games that inspired those early Japanese RPGs existed. that is definitely D&D a little bit for sure.
The booklets, yeah.
And there's a lot of Dungeons and Dragons in this show in general.
It's very well, and that's because the writer-creator Dill, which was something I was going to bring up, Flint Dill, he actually ended up writing stuff with the Dungeons and Dragons people, like Gary Gygax and TSR.
Yeah. So,
but the funny thing about this destruction and how good it is we see it almost immediately after we see how worthless wisdom is, and it just hammers home how screwed Leoric got on his thing, and then a reminder that there is a different Spectral Knight has I'm trying to remember who it's Arzon has the power of knowledge, which just flat out tells you what you need to know. Unlike this, it's just very funny to me to compare those two, and how one tells you a poem that doesn't make any sense, the other one just tells you what you need to do. And the leader of the good guys has the worthless one. I think it's very funny.
Yeah, and there is a moment right after the Staff of Wisdom tells him to become one with the Circle of Light that another one's like, well, it looks like Merklin gave you a bum staff.
Yeah.
Like the Knights instantly know, like, that wasn't very good. And then later when they see Sindar as this kaiju, they explicitly say, like, well, this proves it. Your staff sucks.
Yeah. There's one other thing that happens that I don't know if you were going to cover, that we get Sindar's other character thing is he's not just big and dumb, but he really cares about animals. Because
absolutely. I'm about to get
there.
there.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
No, it's quite all right. So Sindar, as this kaiju, is sort of tearing this castle apart. The knights all dive off the castle into like a moat or a pool of water or like a cart with hay on it. All the classic Assassin's Creed things you can dive onto. And then, he turns back into Sindar and he mentions, hey, these power staffs don't seem to last very long, almost as if the writers need to fit more of them into this episode. But he hears some mewling. Some of the rubble he created, he knocked a bunch of rocks on a poor little cat. And Sindar just immediately feels terrible. And he starts he forgets that he's supposed to be fighting the knights, and he just starts taking rubble off of this. He starts dismantling this pile of rubble, trying to save the cat. And he does, in fact, save the cat. Sindar, kind of a sweetheart.
Mm-hmm.
Classic Robert McKee rule. You save the cat, you proves that, your character is a good guy.
Yep. And it comes up in a later episode that he really cares about animals.
Oh, I'll have to keep an eye out for that. I did not remember that. Farrell pops up. He uses the wolf totem on the Darking Lords. His wolf totem lasts even less time than everyone else. That is like 3 seconds. It's basically like it allows him to run 15 feet, and then he's about human again. That is the most nerf that you're going to see a power. And then the remaining 3 knights, once he turns back into Farrell, they jump on him, and Galadriel attacks Kravex again. Man on woman, some action. You love to see it. But he uses his fear power to make her think that she's surrounded by spiders, which is a pretty good representation of what her fear is like. But then she looks off into the distance and she sees this massive tidal wave coming to like just wipe them off the map, and she starts like having this existential freak out over this tidal wave. That is like that's a much cool, like the laziest version of a cartoon that's like, you're afraid, is like she sees ghosts around her. They go, ooh, and she goes, oh no, and she runs. But like the idea of her envisioning this like natural disaster in this post-apocalyptic world, you could almost, if you wanted to be generous, and sometimes I do, you could say like, oh, well, she has trauma from the apocalypse and how that happened. And so her fear is that after these 3 years of that kind of disaster not happening, that another one could come.
And she springs into action, doesn't she? Like, part of her fear is to try to help?
Yes, she is warning everybody. She is like, it's not that she just sort of like crouches into a ball and puts her, tucks her head between her knees. She is just like, everybody, watch out. There's a tidal wave coming. And you actually have to see from Leoric's perspective. He looks over and there's no water at all. And he goes, no, I think you're hallucinating. But like, that is another cool bit of animation that is a step above what I think you'd get from a He-Man or something like that. This also is sort of setting up where the show can go in terms of scale. That wait until you see episode 7. Lucky for you, it's only like 2 more podcast episodes you're going to hear about episode 7. But that was the one where I watched it. First time I watched it, I was a little high, and I was like, did I just imagine how crazy that episode was? And then I watched it again sober, and I'm like, no, that episode's wild. So if you think this apocalyptic imagery is good, you've seen nothing yet, stay tuned. Hear us talk about the overthrow of Merklin, episode 7. But now that Galadriel is out of the picture, all the Spectral Knights are overwhelmed. They're captured. Ektar takes Leoric's staff and he tries running as a fox, but he's captured. Now, one of these vehicles that the Darkling Lords have has a magical prison that they put Feral inside, and they use its magic to steal his totem. And Darkstorm's like, now the rest of you Spectral Knights, you need to swear allegiance to me or you're going to suffer the same fate. And they say no. And he goes, okay, well, maybe at some point you'll share the same fate. And he just imprisons them with their powers still.
A regular
Very
prison.
odd. Dude, now you know the toys better than me.
Yeah.
This idea of this magical prison that sucks away your totem feels to me like the kind of thing where it's like, oh, there's some like very rudimentary physics thing happening where it's like, we're going to put you in a little chamber, and then when it comes out, something has changed, and it's like a little magic trick. Like, I remember, like, there were Hot Wheels where it's like, if they're in hot water, they're this color. If they're cold water, they're this color. Like, was there ever a toy version of this magical prison, and did it have, like, a gimmick like that?
My neighbor had that thing. It was, the gimmick was the hologram of the skeleton, like it's doing an X-ray on
okay,
you.
yeah.
And you just have to pretend like they don't have their powers. Like, it didn't actually change the figure, but the toys had really good holograms on them, like especially good holograms. Like, I honestly just sat there and looked at the holograms instead of playing with them. I think I only the vehicles, I should say, not the toys. I think I only had one vehicle myself, but my friend had a couple of them. So yeah, that was the trick, was just that it looked like an X-ray. It was cool.
In the era of Pogs, my friend had a metal slammer that had a hologram of a scorpion in it that was the same kind of sticker technology, and I was absolutely fixated on this fucking slammer. I came up with like schemes like, how am I going to steal this slammer from my friend without him knowing it's me, because I must have it. So yeah, I as much as I bag on these toys, I do understand the allure of these dumb hologram stickers.
Awesome.
So they imprison them all. And we get, if the catapult joke was like a good Futurama level joke, this is like the type of humor I associate with Visionaries. It's very lame and drawn out and clunky, which is one of the knights, I forget which, who was already in prison, sees one of the knights get knocked down a chute into the cell with him, and he goes, I think we're in deep trouble. And then a second knight gets knocked down. He goes, I think we're in deeper trouble. And then a third knight gets knocked down. He goes, I think we're in deepest trouble.
Yeah.
And then a fourth knight knocked down. And he goes, oh, it's hopeless. And it's just like, oh, God. This is like, it wasn't funny the first time. And then you do the joke 4 times in a row like that. Horrible.
Maybe that's part of the reboot, is that Galadriel, whatever her
Galadria?
Galadria is noticing how fucking lame all the people around her are. And so, like, you do the exact same joke and have her go, ugh, every time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely a version of this Visionaries reboot that is becoming more and more reality in my mind as we keep speaking about it. There's definitely a version of this that has this sort of community arc where you're like, you will grow to know people, and then you will learn all the things that make you hate them, but then you will grow to accept all of these things, and they will become the things that make you love them. So, like, maybe at first, these knights who didn't know each other at first, they kind of, even though they have a common goal, they kind of bristle and don't get along, and then eventually it's like, oh, another corny, and then like all sitcoms, it turns into the last season of Parks and Rec, where every scene ends with 2 characters hugging. The worst. That last season of Parks and Rec, absolute garbage. Anyway,
The Avatar had a friend who was on that show.
as
Elementary
an
school
extra or a character?
She was a recurring extra. She was a waitress, and I think that has the most scenes in the last season, if I remember right. It's been so long. But yeah, she was a recurring waitress at one of the places they would go. And it was just mind-blowing to me. It's like, that's my friend from elementary school. Yeah. She was always an actress, though. She played Annie, I believe. Sorry.
One of the girl who was in my improv group in high school, Devin Bachrath, stayed with comedy and eventually moved out to L.A. And I'll see her pop up in a sitcom from time to time, and then like I'll be like, oh man, it's fucking Devin. And, you know, she's in the other 2, and she's in Joe Pera Talks to You, and some really cool shows that it was exciting to see my friend there. So shout out to Devin Bachrath, who will be the voice of Galadriel, I've decided, in this new reboot.
Well, and Aubin Philibom is her parents ran a glass studio, Philibom Glass, that might still exist in Tucson. Yeah. She can.
So she'll be Verilina. So we've already started the casting process.
Awesome.
Very good. Darkstorm addresses the people of New Valeric and sort of hammers home that he is in fact a fascist. He says that he owns them completely. He owns everything they own. He owns their bodies. They are basically all now his slaves. He is the most obscene bad king character ever. A citizen steps up to threaten him, And Darkstorm uses his staff to turn him into an old man, and he forces everyone else to pledge allegiance in order to restore the guy. So Darkstorm, using the citizens' love for each other against each other, so evil. What an evil man. Kravex is taunting them in jail, and they all make fun of his voice, which is like, you know what? Fair, because it's Chris Latta. Like, if your jailer was Chris Latta, you would be driven crazy too.
You would do the best impression of him by the end of your jail term.
Yeah,
everybody
absolutely.
would just be screaming back at him.
So he gets mad and runs off. They decide, wait a second, that Staff of Wisdom mentioned a circle of light. We should become the Knights of the Magical Light, which is one of those things that's like, you kind of already were on that path. I don't think you needed a staff. I think they were already an alliance, and I think they didn't need this all-magical deity to tell them to make it official. It seemed like a matter of changing the Facebook status.
More proof that the Wisdom Owl is worthless.
Exactly. And Leoric says, I propose right now we form the Spectral Knights, a sacred order dedicated to bringing light to darkness of our world. May the light shine forever. So just on the fly, he coins the phrase that's going to be their catchphrase for the next 13 episodes or 10 episodes or whatever. But that's when a hurt Kravex decides he's going to teach them a lesson by flooding the cell with water to drown them. Very funny that he just gets butthurt about someone. Like, it's just Chris Latta being so mad that people are making fun of his voice that he just decides to kill all the heroes of the character of the series in the second episode. And that is where we get our cliffhanger, and it says to be continued.
I only have two other notes on this one.
Yeah.
One is that Mortrid literally says he does what he does for love of Darkstorm. He uses the word love, not me.
Very good. And very good. This is gay coded, absolutely.
It's like beyond
gay-coded.
coded. It's like literalized now. I mean, obviously, I don't think Darkstorm has any interest in him, unfortunately, but he ponders.
Darkstorm seems like he could be talked into bisexuality. I don't know. He might be gay. Like, I don't know his sexuality. As far as I know, Darkstorm is asexual. But like, Darkstorm, despite being like the supreme leader type, he is someone who will get talked into doing shit and often doesn't have a plan.
We assume that he is straight and horny just because when in episode 7 he uses magical powers to create women to stand around him.
Oh, okay. I forgot that.
I just remembered that.
So
but that
Darkstorm,
doesn't mean he's
he
not
could,
bi. It just means he leans straight, we'll say. Well, this is important, obviously.
I really do think that Mortrid could wear him down.
Yeah.
If we were given a second season, we definitely would have had our first gay kiss on children's television.
And it would have been so toxic. It would have been so fucking toxic that the censors would let it
Sugar.
through.
People are very open to two gay cartoon characters kissing. It never causes any problems.
Yeah. My other note is during the recap, the narrator refers to the good kingdoms as the Confederacy, not New Valeric.
I did notice that as well.
It's the only time I think they do that, but yeah, calling them the Confederacy is another one of these. Are these really the good guys, or are these the less bad guys? You know, there's just a lot of that I'm pretty sure is there on purpose.
I don't know. I do think Dilly or Dill or whatever.
Yeah.
I've listened to some other podcasts that cover shows that he worked on, and it does seem like he is a right-wing guy.
Yeah.
So it might not be subversive on his part. It might be like, yeah, you know, they're rebelling against the Northern tyranny. I don't know. That would be a wild thing to project onto this man who made cartoons in the 80s. But
yeah, we'll see.
It's possible. So we're now on to episode 3, Quest for the Dragon's Eye.
Silence! Do you think I give you magic out of selflessness? Of course not. I do it because I want you to be instruments of my will.
Again, it opens with another recap of the last episode, but I just told you what happened in the last episode. I did that recap, so I don't need to do that part. I will ask you, though, do you know if it was standard procedure for these kinds of cartoons that had multiple parts to have these sort of recaps previously on segments at the beginning? Or did they just sort of expect kids to catch up? Because I know like G.I. Joe and Transformers had a ton of multi-part episodes, and do you know if they did a previously on?
You know what, I don't know G.I. Joe and Transform well enough to remember. I do remember that when they would break up the G.I. Joe movie into episodes, they would do that. And I know that later Justice League, when the first couple seasons of Justice League were all 2-parters, and they definitely did that. And Batman would do that too, now that I think about it. If Batman had a 2-parter,
So this is probably just standard procedure for these kinds of cartoons. Probably nothing that Visionaries is inventing.
No, but I can't remember it happening very often.
I remember, like, that was part of the thing that made me think the X-Men cartoon on Fox was, like, for adults, because it would do it previously on, and I'm like, they do previously ons on the shows my parents watch. That's an NYPD Blue move.
I mean, if you watch it in a vacuum, X-Men, the Fox X-Men show is for children, but if you watch it compared to what other shows were doing at the time, American shows in particular, it really was sort of revolutionary to have it.
When you think about it being in the same block as Bobby's World, it's kind of like, okay, X-Men is a different thing.
Yeah, between it and Batman was not what the thing it did was not, adult. I guess it had some adult themes. Batman was the more adult themed show, but it was the one that had the serialization, which Batman didn't usually have. But just the fact that those two shows premiered around the same time really did change the trajectory there of everything. The fact that adult people realized, oh, kids will watch good stuff too.
So we now open episode 3 on what might be the best scene of the whole fucking series, because it is so fucking funny to me. Recon asks how the money of their little loot they captured New Valeric, and how the money of New Valeric is going to be split. And Darkstorm, drunk on power, insists it's all his. Lexor grumbles about it, but when Darkstorm confronts him, he backs out of it. And this infuriates Kravex.
This scene is why Kravex is
always yelling.
He's my favorite character because of this scene.
So Kravex, already always at a 10, gets pushed to 11, and he just starts screaming. He goes, and I'm not going to do the voice because I have neighbors.
Yeah.
And I have to go to work later, and I don't want to ruin my voice beforehand. But he goes, "You coward! You expect to enrage me into doing your dirty work? Well, you have half succeeded. You enraged me!" And then he punches out Lexor, and it is just like a opening of Street Fighter 2, just like fist moves across the screen, guy falls out of frame, like punch out. It is so funny. And then he runs to Darkstorm and he goes, "Greedy swine, what gives you the right to lay claim to the fruits of our labor?" So Marxist Kravex is here, punches out Darkstorm. All the workers unite and cheer. And these two punch outs are especially funny because there's no cut. It is literally like he punches out Lexor, and then the camera pans with him as he runs across the room to punch out Darkstorm. So it's just like holding on this really silly energy of Kravex just being this maniac punching out everybody. And you're like, okay, maybe Kravex should be the leader. Like, he's a little unstable, but I have a lot of respect for Kravex at this point. And then he grabs Recon by the throat and he screams at him for being a mercenary without any loyalty. So he throws him across a table, which is like, Kravex is the guy who is most money motivated. I would think he's also a mercenary.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing for him to get mad at Recon for being motivated entirely by money, but I guess at this point he's just seeing
he's so
his
mad.
raw rage.
He's just so mad. He's gonna point out that one time you did that thing or the stupid shirt you wore or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's made even more clear because he screams at Mordred for being a bootlicker, but then he turns to Sindar and he goes, "And I'll crack you out of principle," and he punches out Sindar for no reason whatsoever. And Darkstorm is tells Recon, "Recon, please, you have to stop it." And Recon says, "Not until I'm compensated."
You coward! You expect to enrage me into doing your dirty work? Well, you have succeeded. You enraged me! Greedy swine! What gives you the right to lay claim to the fruits of our labor? Lying filth! You are a mercenary! You have no loyalty. For enough money, you would betray yourself! And you, Mordred, bootlicker, have you no will of your own? Sindar, I'll just crack you out of principle!
I guess they did wisely go in the context of this action here, it would not be funny if Kravex punched out Viralina. That would go into territory of violence against women.
Yeah.
So she is wisely not in this scene.
They're also around a dinner table. I think it makes it even funnier is that this is during a meal. They're having a communal meal to discuss.
It's got drunk Thanksgiving energy.
Yeah.
Kravex is the GOAT. Very good. We're seeing again the the way that the second episode makes it seem like the Darkling Lords are way more powerful than the Spectral Knights. This episode immediately establishes, actually, the thing the Spectral Knights have is loyalty to each other. All for one for all. Musketeers, they're Knights of the round table, everyone's equal, that sort of thing. So we cut from this just absolutely brutal Jerry Springer scene back to the Spectral Knights, where the prison cell is flooding. They're all treading water. Arzon turns into an eagle. He carries Leoric up out of the water, and he pledged that they're going to return to save the rest. I do think it'd be funny if they were just like, we'll start a kingdom without those guys.
Yeah.
If Arzon was also looking for a power play. Doesn't happen, though, because evil is dumb. They're always fighting. The good is smart because they have teamwork. It's, kids show storytelling. They get spotted by guards, and the alarm is sounded, but they're too quick for the guards, and they run away. And then there's a little bit of animation where they fully jump over the heads of another group of guards, and it's like, I think that was written out. I think that was storyboarded. And then when they got to TMS was like, this doesn't make any physical sense whatsoever. So they try to put the camera in a place you can't tell what's happening. It's edited very quickly. I don't think anyone thought about how that was going to work visually. This weird little 8-foot jump that the Knights do. Wearing, what you must assume is like 70 pounds of armor. They run up to another group of guards and they call out, "Hey, can't you hear the alarm? The prisoners have escaped. After them." And the guards fall for it. They're like, "Oh, okay." And they run off, which proves that even in this world, no one can tell these characters apart. But one of the guards stays behind. He goes, "Wait a second. I know you, Leoric. By the way, these are guards for New Valeric, or did the Darkling Lords bring these guys? Because right now, or no, they got brought back.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm remembering correctly. This is not in New Valeric. They were attacked at New Valeric and then captured and then brought back to Darkstorm's castle. So these are all Darkstorm's guys. I was going to say, not a lot of loyalty here, but this is a different place.
Yeah.
At any rate, Leoric turns into a lion to scare the one remaining guard. He runs away. They rush to the cell door and unlock it. The guards rush him, but the door's open and they're washed away with water just in time. All the Spectral Knights fly out in their animal form, and all the animal forms scare the remaining guards, and all the guards run away, which is like, I do think they are a little bit aware that it's like, these are people like nobility, basically, their status. They all these knights technically rule all of the citizens of New Valeric, and they are given just like superhuman magical powers. So you got this kind of thing where it's like, it might not be in good taste if we just had a bunch of scenes of these superheroes beating up normal people. I don't know. This might be my projection of just why I don't like superhero stuff in general, like the fascism inherent and that sort of a thing. That might not be something that is actually motivating anyone creating Visionaries in 1987. But I do think it's very handy that all the guards don't have to fight the knights because they're just so scared of these lions and bears and cheetahs and everything that they run away on their own accord.
Right.
Leoric lays out his plan. They're going to get Farrell's totem back. They're going to get their power steps back. And then they're going to round up Darkstorm and all the other Darkling Lords. Ektar and Farrell make their way to the magical dungeon. Farrell climbs inside. Ektar somehow knows how this magical dungeon works. A guard walks up, but Ektar again pulls a little disguise trick where he pretends to be Sir Ace McGillicuddy, magical repairs. And he's like, "Oh, thank God you're here, guard. I need help. This is a real doozy, this problem." And the guard's like, "I don't want to get sucked into this." Which is me.
Job.
Every time technology goes wrong at work and it's my responsibility to fix it because I'm the supervisor, I go absolutely insane because I hate computers and I don't understand them. And I'm just like, can't we just close the store and all go home? I don't want to deal with this. So I would be that guard who's just like, "Bye, Ace." Meanwhile, the other knights have tied up a bunch of guards and gotten their staffs back. And the guard says, "Yeah, you're going to be in big trouble when Darkstorm finds out about this." And Galadriel's like, "Yeah, what do you think Darkstorm is going to do to you?" And the guard's like, "Oh, I didn't think of that." That's a pretty funny joke.
Yeah.
They all run together, and the banquet hall truly has devolved into a Jerry Springer episode because chairs are being thrown at this point. It's really funny that during all this other action, Kravex is still just punching out everybody. This has not calmed down in the least. If anything, it's only escalated. Darkstorm sees the knights come in and tries to use his staff, but the staff is out of magic, and then he just starts losing it. He starts throwing every staff all over the place. He's ripping shelves out of the walls like Ricky Bobby, Dewey Cox and Walk Hard, like ripping the sinks out of the walls. He's like, everyone in the scene is just screaming and shouting and committing horrible violence to the room around them.
They're being toddlers. It's very
very funny.
Yeah.
Leoric taunts him for not remembering that the staffs need to be recharged. The Darkling Lords flee. The Spectral Knights follow in vehicles of their own. We get a fun zoom in where Witterquick's face, where like the ship is being flown around, and there's a little bit of like, how do you work this thing? Whoa. And like the vehicle flies directly into the camera, and you get this like big close up on Witterquick's face panicking. That's like a fun bit of animation that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see in a He-Man type thing. Witterquick screams, "We're going to hit a wall." And then, so again, like, this is the point where I just thought about like every parent throughout history who has had to suffer, not just from this show, but like shows throughout time of your kids watching children's entertainment where it's just characters screaming. Like I'm so glad I don't have kids because
the Goonies effect.
The Goonies effect. Yes, very good. The Goonies is a movie where every main character screams 70% of their lines. And, there you have your SpongeBobs and everything that are just like the really obnoxious cartoons that are full of screaming. Hard to be a parent, is all I will say. Shout out to all you parents watching. And no wonder when they see something like gentle and docile like Dora the Explorer or something, they're just like, oh, what a great show.
Yeah. Bluey.
No one's shrieking.
Bluey's the one that all the parents are into now. I've never watched it.
Yeah, no one shrieks on Bluey. Probably greatest thing ever then. They find a new vehicle. This one has little pod things that detach, and the little pod things have lasers. Again, like such a toy commercial.
Yeah.
Do you know what this vehicle is called with the pod things?
No. I neither me nor my neighbor had this one. I don't remember what it's called.
I wonder if this was, I can't recall if this even shows up again or if it's just like an idea they had in the moment.
No, it's like their main, it's like each side has a main big vehicle, and that's theirs. Yeah. The little pod thing.
So they jump out of the pods, they land on the bad guy vehicle, they're all fighting. Another knight chases down Mordred. Mordred turns into a bug. He gets stepped on. That's more sexy bootlicker.
I just think it's interesting
for you
can
right there.
Just step on him. Like he's not even powerful enough to. It's called the Capture Chariot.
Okay.
I just looked it up. The Capture Chariot. That's not a very good name. Anyway.
Well, they're good guys, so they're not going to kill with that gun. They're going to capture. The Pokemon just fainted. It's that energy.
That's not blood.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah. Mordred's bug is really underpowered, especially when you compare like later on in a bit, which I'll get to in just a second, because Lexor flees. He turns into an armadillo rolled up into a ball. Cryotech just picks him up and chucks him into a hole. Which is very funny. Kravex tries to flee as the Philot, but he gets knocked out of the sky. And then we get Darkstorm turning into a mollusk. And you might think like, oh yeah, so Mordred is a bug, so he's just like a little bug or whatever. Darkstorm's a mollusk, he's just like a little snail. No, Darkstorm turns into this giant, creepy, like punk rock snail that has all these spikes all over it and can shoot lasers out of its mouth. But Leoric just hops on top of him like a cowboy at a rodeo, and he tames him, and all of the Darkling Lords are captured. I like the action in Visionaries when it gets kind of big and fantastic, like when you're doing the kaiju in episode 2 and some other stuff. These sort of individual fights between the characters, not very well staged. Action shows got a lot better at like coming up with interesting fight scenes.
They realized you had to actually choreograph.
Exactly. The Darkling Lords are all in a prison. It looks like a circus train car because it's just like this big like vehicle with bars that they're all in public, and people are throwing tomatoes at them. Because, after what Darkstorm did to the citizens, they're very happy to see all these chumps in chains. The Spectral Knights all chant, "May the light shine forever." The crowd chants it back with them. This is the "May the Force be with you" of the show. Merklin appears before the Darkling Lords, and he's like, all right, here's a get out of jail free card. I didn't think that the tides would turn this quickly. I kind of need both of you fighting each other, which again is further evidence that Merklin is like Sheev Palpatine in a way, where it's like, if you look at the prequels, it is Chancellor Palpatine is in charge of both sides of the war, of the Clone Wars, and he's just sort of using them against each other to destabilize both sides. This is what it appears Merklin is up to as well. So because the Darkling Lords got their asses handed him so thoroughly, he has to come in like Mario Kart and tip the scales back. He gives them the blue shell. After the commercial break, we see that all of these Darkling Lords are working in an assembly line for license plates, which again is like where this show breaks its reality to do a cartoony gag. This feels like a gag that you would appear in like an episode of Garfield where he's in the pound, so he has to make license plates.
What are the license plates for? There's no working vehicles.
There's no cars. Later on, someone says that they're traffic signs, but they are just 4 letters stamped onto a square. All the
Why
same
are there
4 letters.
traffic signs? There's no cars.
Yeah, no, it's pretty dumb. But the conveyor belt that the machine they're using is driven by 2 pigs walking towards corn, and that is funny.
Yeah, I love it. I love that their way of getting around the no technology rule is always animals.
Animals on conveyor belts is the same thing as microchip technology as far as this cartoon is concerned. And I love it because those 2 pigs, after an episode that is just people screaming, those 2 pigs look so bored. They're just like so happy to slowly wander towards corn.
Yeah.
Kravex is yelling at Darkstorm because he's Kravex, so he's yelling at Darkstorm. He trips and falls. A hammer somehow falls and it lands on his face and it prints a letter on him and his eyes do like a really silly eye roll, and it's like the animation is terrible there, and it's a very dumb cartoony joke. So this is again like
there is a good line during this scene though.
What's that?
And Darkstorm says, "I find this work degrading," and Kravis screams, "That's because it is degrading." He's so annoyed by every word that comes out of these people's mouths.
I do grow to love Kravex more and more with each classic shriek from Chris Latta. But I do think the scene is sort of like an example of like Visionaries humor is extremely hit or miss.
Yeah.
Every once in a while they have a good joke, but then a lot of the times they don't have one and they feel they need to make one anyway and they do a terrible one. So, meanwhile, out in a field, there is a famine crisis and the citizens of New Valeric are struggling to grow crops. And the Spectral Knights are out there to investigate and try to figure out how to help because they're like, well, I guess if we're rebuilding society, we have to attend to our citizens.
I guess.
This, to me, is the most interesting and most underexplored aspect of Visionaries, this idea of the Spectral Knights versus the citizens.
Yeah.
And legislation and what ruling looks like. This scene is an example of them exploring it. So I do like this little subplot, even though it's like this episode has too much shit packed into it. All this stuff feels really quickly rushed.
Yeah, this is like 22 minutes. It's 22 minutes. The thing I would add for our reboot is that we make the Spectral Knights all these idealist, basically children who want to have adventures, and we really hammer home that they are not prepared for municipality rules and like actually dealing with their subjects' problems and boring things that are actually what government entails. And they're very excited to go out and fight anytime they can. And meanwhile, all the people who live there are like, Jesus Christ, we don't even have food. Like,
yeah, I think our reboot needs a citizen liaison for the Knights who like stands in for like we have one named character who is like stands in for what the people of New Valeric think about everything, and so like it would be like this very determined very determined young person who has, the prime of their life was wasted in this apocalypse. It's sort of, it could be the equivalent of like how millennials, like right when they turned 12, 9/11 happened. And they're like, oh, I grew up as a child thinking the world was going to be one way and that was taken away from me forever. And like, you can have this sort of idealistic millennial type energy person who's like, I see an example because these Knights don't know their ass from their elbows. I see a vacuum that I'm going to step into, and I'm going to try to guide these Knights because I am actually more qualified to lead.
I just realized that without meaning to, we went back to Parks and Rec.
Ah, fuck.
Parks and Rec, but with Visionaries.
Our pitch meetings have to go like we take 4 steps creatively, and then we have to stop and reorient ourselves to take 2 steps away from Parks and Rec because we keep accidentally recreating Parks and Rec.
Okay.
Anyway, the farmers in this scene are hysterical.
Yes,
it was very clear that it is just the existing voice actors.
Yes, I have
asked,
that. Yeah, that's the note I have here. The exact note. Peter,
what impressions can you do?
Yeah,
Peter Cullen is
Peter Cullen's famous for John Wayne. So.
That's incredible. I did not know that about Peter Cullen. But like these are all boomers who are doing these voices, and all of these baby boomers have all of the most baby boomer ass impressions. So the first 2 farmers we meet are Ronald Reagan and Katharine Hepburn. The next farmers we meet are Walter Brennan from Rio Bravo, Jimmy Stewart, and John Wayne. And it is just like and the most hilarious thing about the farmers is that they're all speaking one sentence and they just keep interrupting each other. So it's almost as if they were so delighted with the impressions that they just kept inventing characters to add more and more impressions. Like there only needs to be the two farmers for the scene, but they keep introducing more people so you could have like it does feel like a kind of a smart comedy joke of just like we know that the audience thinks this is silly, so we're going to put a lampshade on it by like pushing it further and showing that we know it's silly too.
It's also a little Futurama-esque, I think.
Exactly. I love it. They're like, you know what? We are not farmers, but we'll ask Merklin for help. He has magic. Meanwhile, all the Darkling Lords are very pissed at Darkstorm because he has this key and he's not using it. And they're like, why aren't you using it? And he's like, because. And they're like, please. And he goes, okay, fine. And that is how I think... This is how I think we introduce Darkstorm to bisexuality, is this same dynamic. The Darkling Lords, he doesn't know how to use the key, but just holding it up is enough. They all teleport out there, and it's like, okay, well, that solves that problem. It's magic. Sometimes you can just write yourself out of a story, a problem with magic.
Yeah.
And now the Darkling Lords are like, they're going to go see Merklin. We're going to scout ahead, and we're going to be on top of this Iron Mountain and drop an avalanche on them. We get more weird, just sort of dumb, like, every once in a while, you'll have VO when you are seeing characters from a long shot, and you'll have characters just saying, like, when we're ruling this new kingdom, how about this? How about that? We saw that in the first episode, and now, again, Witterquick is like, what if we did an elevator to Iron Mountain? Well, I really hate walking up this mountain every time. and Galadriel is like, all right, well, how are you powering this elevator? And he's like, well, we could have a series of pulleys, and we could have oxen in the valley, and we don't get to hear any more of his great engineering skills, because that is when they're interrupted by the avalanche. They're ambushed. There's even more fighting. This episode is exhausting because it's just like brutally paced, and 80% of it is fighting. But
almost
again,
like
they're
they
just
thought
like
they were going to get 4 episodes for the introduction, and then they said no 3, and they're like, shit, we have a lot of shit. Okay.
That is actually a good theory, because episode 3 in particular feels like 2 separate episodes that have been smushed together, because this whole little like we're gonna go save these farmers plot feels like entirely separate from everything that happened previously. So again, there's just more fighting. There's a bit where the Darkling Lords are trying to throw their staffs down the mountain, but Arzon turns into an eagle and collects them. It's fine. It's kind of nothing. We now cut to Darkstorm in Merklin's chambers. He is petitioning Merklin to re-energize their power staffs. The Spectral Knights now arrive, and then they are like, well, let's fight again. And Merklin's like, no, there will be no fighting in the shrine. And I'm like, okay, good. Thank you, Merklin. That is also what I felt. There should not be another fight scene here. Here is the quote, because I do think this speaks a lot to Merklin and where he's coming from. He says, there will be no fighting in the shrine. Let me be clear on this point. I care nothing about your petty squabbles. I have concerns of my own. Merklin tells them he has to retrieve the dragon's eye. Again, so many episodes from here on out will be Merklin saying, by the way, here's another magical MacGuffin I want you to get for me. And the quest to get it is where the story comes from. And they ask why they should be getting this magical eye. And then he gives a line that I do think is, again, like, here is Merklin. Here is who Merklin is. We've been setting up the world, the stakes, the toys, everything with these 3 episodes. Here's where we're really hammering home what to think about Merklin, which is, do you think I give you magic out of selflessness? Of course not. I do it because I want you to be instruments of my will. But to show I intend to be fair, I will allow you to dip your power staffs into the sacred pool one last time for free. Now here is your map. So we already are like, don't trust Merklin. Merklin might be the white-bearded wizard who gives them powers, but he is a morally dubious wizard. Mm-hmm. And again, this core dynamic of bad guys, good guys, all being puppeted by the same guy, and sometimes they have to work together, but most of the times they're fighting each other. Like, that is a more interesting premise than you're ever going to get out of these 80s kid shows.
Yeah.
So the Spectral Knights, they go off to fulfill the quest. The Darkling Lords stick around. They're like, what if instead we just dethrone you and then we become God? And they try to use their special powers and command them to attack Merklin. Kravex screams his magical words, because again, they all have poems to use their magical powers. And this particular reading of Kravex's fear power is so unhinged that I have to think that they asked Chris Latta for one more take, and then he sarcastically gave them this one, because he's like, do you understand what I'm doing with my voice right now? Don't make me do another take. And they're like, come on, just one more, Chris. And he's like, all right, fine. On mist-filled pits, dark, unclear, don't you before with my like he's like killing himself, and like the camera pushes into his face because TMS heard this line delivery and was like, okay, we need to emphasize that Kravex is out of his mind. But so here's the thing, like their special powers are sometimes just like a power, like the Lexor can throw up a big impenetrable dome that protects them from like ballistics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then in this case, all the powers are these like separate entities who are popping out of the staffs and walking towards Merklin, and then see Merklin and go, oh, we're not allowed to fight him. And they return to the staffs. And it's like again, you don't need this convoluted levels of magic, but basically we have established you cannot actually use Merklin's power against him. It's his power. Merklin isn't even really mad about this. He just is annoyed. So he
expected it at some point, probably.
So the lords decide, well, let's attack him on our own. They pull out their weapons, but Merklin's just like, I don't have time for this. And he uses his magic to make energy hands reach out of the sacred pool, and it grabs them, pulling them under, and teleports them to where the Eye of the Dragon is. So now the Spectral Knights are in this cool, like spooky old industrial complex. So this is, again, where we're getting a little bit more of the post-apocalypse part, where the like ancient ruins they have to go to are not like some like thing that's inspired by a Greek temple or something. It is in fact like an old factory that has been abandoned in the years since electricity stopped working. I like this setting a lot. Darkling Lords fight the Spectral Knights again. Because they all see each other and they're just they cannot help themselves. They are just beta fish. They just start freaking out and fighting. If you put a mirror in front of them, they can't tell each other apart, so they'll think it's a Spectral Knight and they'll start fighting the mirror.
Yeah.
These they can't stop. But at some point, their fight tumbles into this big garage where they encounter a techno dragon. And again, like another cool thing about Visionaries. Visionaries is a mix of fantasy and sci-fi. It's a mix of post-apocalyptic and like Dungeons and Dragons. So you're getting in a lot of these episodes just like a magical creature that you didn't know was like part of the reality of this world will appear. And there is just this giant robot dragon, this Mecha Godzilla ass fucking T-Rex.
What it reminded me of was there was this thing that used to be at monster truck events around this time called Robosaurus that would pick up and crush cars and breathe fire.
Oh yeah,
it was called Truckosaurus on a Simpsons parody, so I think everybody thinks it's called Truckosaurus, but it was actually called Robosaurus.
Yeah, Robosaurus is definitely what they're going for here, especially the way it picks things up. Because later when they fight it sort of bends down and it uses these like little claws to slowly grab Darkling Lords and Spectral Knights. And Arzon uses his knowledge staff to ask like, hey, what is that wizard in the cockpit of this Techno Dragon doing? The wizard is Falkhama. He's holding the dragon's eye. Falkhama will become an important character later on. He's a small part of this episode.
He's voiced by Hal Rail, who does Arzon's voice. So he's not like a new cast member.
More importantly, we're getting our second appearance of Jim Kelly, the deity of knowledge that comes out of the knowledge staff. And in the first episode, when he used his power of knowledge, the god of knowledge, or whatever you call this character, he had this like weird raspy voice. I'm speaking to you from beyond and telling you things that only I know from my, bizarre vantage point, like that kind of a character. Mm-hmm. But here they're making him more. It's not a full blown. There is a certain kind of voice a black character would have in 80s and 90s cartoons. Mm-hmm. And it was always a deep voice. And it was always like, hey, man.
Slightly jive speaky.
Yeah, it would never go like full blaxploitation.
Yeah, they knew better than that, but not.
But there was definite like you would hear a voice, and if you didn't even see a character, you would know like, oh well, that's a black character speaking because I'm watching a cartoon and black people talk like this. Mm-hmm. It's like one of the good things about I forget if it's Carl or Lenny on The Simpsons. Is
Carl.
The black character on The Simpsons. Yeah. All the black characters on The Simpsons are kind of like these voices that you don't necessarily associate with black characters in cartoons.
Dr.
And
Hibbert.
Yeah, and they're voiced by white people. Yeah. So that's part of it. But it could be worse. Apu didn't get off that well. So
yeah.
At any rate, this figure of knowledge. He has this big brain that looks like an afro. He has a headband. He's not wearing a shirt. I think he looks like Jim Kelly. He's more like Jim Kelly now than he was before. I'm calling it. This is Jim Kelly. And he basically tells him, hey, that's Falcama. He's holding the dragon's eye. It's not a lot of useful information. 3 Spectral Knights and 1 Darkling Lord get scooped up together and tossed in the dragon's mouth. So we get this moment where they kind of have to work together to figure their way out of it. They realize that even though there's sort of this fire reactor happening in the dragon's stomach, it is in fact more safe than being crushed by the mouth because their armor is heat resistant. So they just dive into its stomach. The dragon picks up with its other claw more Spectral Knights and Darkling Lords, and Galadriel tells Kravex that he should use his fear power against it. Galadriel, having experienced the fear power, she would have the knowledge to recommend it. So we get a little continuity there. And again, these characters having to work together after having just fought each other, a little more interesting than you might think. Can you make a robot afraid? Do androids dream of electric sheep? I don't know. But this dragon gets fear. Again, we're just like, powers, show the power. So we have the fear power. It drops the wizards. It drops the knights. The other knights escape somehow. I forget how they escape out of the dragon's belly. The wizard realizes he's been beat, and he runs, and he kind of tosses the eye of the dragon aside. So they go after that and allow him to escape. The staff kind of has a magical mind of its own, so they're all playing a hot potato as they're trying to catch it, and it keeps slipping out of their grasps. Bounces from person to person. Not very interesting animation. It's kind of just like an arbitrary thing. It lands in the Spectral Knights. Spectral Knights win. They run away. They bring it to Merklin, and Merklin's like, all right, now I can recharge your staffs. And he goes, actually, we understand we have a little leverage over you. We need more than just our staffs recharged. We need you to feed our people. And Merklin's like, okay, I will give you the magic to feed your people, but don't tell the Darkling Lords that you discovered the concept of leverage. And they're like, don't worry. We don't want the Darkling Lords to be any more effective at being dirtbags than they already are. It's very funny that it's just accepted. It's like, these guys are stupid, right? They don't actually understand what's going on here. And this could be a secret between us. And it's like, yeah, I guess we're good guys and we have honor. We will honor our agreement to not tell the Darkling Lords about the art of negotiation.
The note I have here is that Merklin is like any shitty boss that seems to think creating competition between workers somehow makes them more efficient workers. And that also he should probably have just killed the Darking Lords and started over because he can clearly make more of these.
Right. Again, we have the idea that it's like all the knights who made it to the shrine in the first episode are the only ones who could possibly be trusted with magic because they are the most worthy knights. But like that is not really how that shook out in that cave.
Just have him go, try again.
So he gives them their magic. We now see the Darkling Lords have run into Falcama as he was fleeing. They capture him. He says, look, I have magic. I know things about Merklin. We can overthrow him together. And they're like, all right, well, I think you're going to be useful. So we're going to put you in jail to use later for this. So we, again, are getting seeds of continuity, even though the next episode is not a direct continuation of this, the way that the first 3 episodes are all direct continuations of each other. We cut to the Spectral Knights tossing seeds themselves to grow trees, and they're like, I don't know anything about farming. And he goes, well, that's the beauty of it. Merklin says you don't have to. We are at the 11th hour on this episode. We have spent so much time doing 15 other plots that like we get 8 seconds for this resolution where it's like, we have like 15 frames of the Spectral Knights throwing seeds. We have 10 frames of the tree growing. We have 2 seconds of a farmer walking over and grabbing an apple and eating it and going, yep, it's good. And then the knights all go, may the light shine forever. End credits. Like they do not linger on these farmers at all because they have no time. They have crammed way too much. They've crammed 2 episodes into 1 episode. Yep. And that is episode 3 of Visionaries. And I think that these first 3 episodes do a good job of hammering home the things that are going to be awesome about the show and the things that are going to suck about this show. Mm-hmm. I did not watch a lot of these shows from the 80s. And so when people say a thing I like from childhood is good, actually, I am always skeptical because that always burns me.
And
if I see it later,
as you should be.
Yeah. Now, you shouldn't shit on people for having that nostalgia. Like, you should, let people have the nostalgia they have, I'm never going to be able to look at the X-Files objectively. Mm-hmm. I think that show is pretty amazing, even when it's bad, because I saw it when I was 9, and I was like, this is awesome. So, let people enjoy things. But I do look at people with a side eye and say, oh, yeah, no, yeah, sure, I'll watch The Goonies, and Like, I don't. And then I finally see the Goonies, and I'm like, yep, I should have seen it when I was 8 because this is annoying. Cloak and Dagger, people will be like, Cloak and Dagger with Henry Thomas, that's like a real thriller. It's like, it's amazing. It's a kid's movie because there's guys with machine guns. And you're like, it's a little bit more mature than Home Alone, but not much. I think you saw it when you were 9, and, Dabney Coleman made you cry, which is fine because Dabney Coleman's great in that movie. But generally speaking, when you would be like, oh, Visionaries, this was a cool show. There was something to it that other shows didn't have. I did sort of go, well, that's very nice, Gabe.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something that I care about.
Yeah. And I wasn't like, it's partially a joke just because nobody else remembers Visionaries. Like, I'm not really like, I don't have any of the toys as an adult or anything, but it's just like one of those things that I revisited all of these shows when I was sick, and it was the one that I was like, hey, this one's, I mean, you have to take into context being a 24, 25-year-old watching garbage. And then there's this little 13 episode thing in the middle there that isn't complete garbage. It really did pump it up as far as...
This is, I think, part of the fuel for these cult followings.
Yeah.
Is people don't have, like, the barometer of an average person's take on it because... the only people who saw it and remembered it are the people that it spoke to.
Yeah.
And so you get this bias of like everyone who remembers the cult show all agrees it's amazing. And so everyone you run into who you talk to about it, they're all like, oh yeah, that show is amazing. And then suddenly it just has the reputation for being amazing. And then something happens where it's like it gets a Blu-ray release and goes out into the wider and you're like, I guess you had to be there. I guess anime in the 90s was a different thing. You had to be there. It's still pretty good, but don't know about this one. But I do think, I'm like, you do these 3 episodes here, and I go, okay, I'm not mad at Gabe that we have a Visionaries rewatch podcast. That's something, because I am enjoying myself, if only because at least once an episode, Chris Latta is absolutely going to lose his mind.
I remembered, since we recorded the first one, that when I was doing this is when, do you remember Chud blogs? Did you have a Chud blog? Yeah.
I did a vlog. I did like a weird comedy thing where I was a version of myself that was like more autistic.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw. I don't know why I said, yeah, I'll do one. And then I didn't really know what to do with it. And so for a while, I was going to rewatch all these shows and review them on my Chud blog. And I made my...
Chud.com, the fall and film site that was, along with an Ain't It Cool News, one of the big sites in the sort of early to mid 2000s.
It's basically how Patrick and I met and how I met anyone else who doesn't live within driving distance. Like
that's right.
5 minutes.
We were all on the forums for good and for ill.
Yeah, and then we all just sort of, like, when I moved to Facebook, I just took all the people I remembered liking from the forums. And now nobody has Facebook.
That was the death of web forums in general, was everyone was like, we can just have these conversations on Facebook.
And
where
we don't have to deal with the weirdos.
Yeah.
But anyway, I made myself a template, and one of the templates was, what is the MacGuffin? Because like Dino Riders and Thundercats, there's always, they had overarching MacGuffins, like one thing that everybody was trying to get, maybe 2 things in Dino Riders' case. And Visionaries was one of the only shows that had multiple MacGuffins, where it was sort of built into it. And it was also the only show where the word MacGuffin, like the exact precise meaning of the word, as Hitchcock, I believe, coined it, which is that it is something that propels the plot, but that itself really doesn't have anything to do with the plot. And these are really like that because we have no idea what Merklin's going to do with the dragon's eye. Like,
right. The 39 steps is the classic thing where it's like a specific formula for making a kind of bomb that the Axis powers in World War II want. And one guy who has a perfect memory in the movie, The 39 Steps, has them memorized. And so it's like they're trying to get this information out of this guy's head. The bomb itself is not used in the plot at all. It's just the formula. We see Merklin toss the dragon's eye into the sacred pool, and presumably it powers it, or it does whatever. It exfoliates his skin, whatever he needs it for.
Now it's coming to me in our reboot. This all pays off in a later season where Merklin turns bad, like reveals his plan, and Darkling Lords and Spectral Knights have to team up, and they have to battle all of the MacGuffins that they previously got for him and didn't think anything of. That's how you do it.
I prefer that to the Marvel thing where there's just an eye of a dragon on a shelf in the background of a scene somewhere.
Right.
And the next episodes we're getting are again going to expand what Visionaries can do. We have episode 4 of Price of Freedom, where we're going to encounter some of the worst citizens that Prismos has to offer. Just absolute trash people. So it's like not everyone has an idea of like, let's rebuild an egalitarian society. Some people want to bring back slavery. So that's what episode 4 is about. And then episode 5 is a classic cartoon premise of like the one character in the group feels like an outsider and he gets mad and he feels insecure and he has to prove himself, but the group loved him the whole time anyway. And that's episode number 5, Feral Steps Out. So those are ones we're going to be covering next episode. Gabe, do you have any spiel about where people can find us and rating, reviewing, and podcast platform of choice, etc.?
I haven't done it yet. As of this recording, I haven't put it together. So it will hopefully be when I put the first recording live. It will hopefully be all on there. It's probably going to be its own stream, though.
Look, I'm going to level with you folks. All right. This is not a show for a mainstream audience. This is a show for you, the niche, select cult that understands that Visionaries is great. And you're the people I was talking about earlier who are like, oh my God, no one's heard of this show. You finally found a podcast where people are like watching the show and taking it seriously and talking about it and stuff. That's awesome. Tell your like-minded friends about the show. Don't bother rating or reviewing. Like some rando following an iTunes algorithm is not going to find this podcast. No. But if you know someone who is interested in toys from the 80s, cartoons from the 80s, that sort of thing, tell them about the show.
And you know what? I'll say this. I'm still, as of now, deciding how much money I'm willing to spend to put this show up. And if it's going to be bi-monthly or monthly. I want it to be bi-monthly. I don't know if I can afford that. If you want to help me afford that, go to the Genre Grinder Patreon and give me a couple bucks and maybe I can afford that.
There you go.
Because this is all out of pocket. And also just go to Genre Grinder because that's my real podcast website, and I really like it, and I'm doing good things there.
A lot of good Blu-ray reviews. If you are the kind of dork who is obsessed with 80s cartoons and toys, you're probably also the kind of person who cares about what kind of transfer this, random horror movie from the 70s got. That's where you're going to find that information, genregrinder.com.
Awesome. Yeah, and then there's this podcast called 96 Greers.
That's right. I'm a co-host of a podcast about character actor Judy Greer and all of the many disappointing mom roles that she plays. Sometimes she gets some good ones. She was the lead of a very small movie directed by Michael Shannon recently called Eric LaRue. That's awesome. So we cover some good stuff. We saw her live on stage at the Steppenwolf Theater. We did a podcast about that. Like, it's a really fun podcast that we do, me and my partner Barry, that dives into the idea of like, what does it mean to be a working character actor? Like when you are not a draw, you are not getting nominated for awards, you are just doing the work. You are saying yes and you are showing up and you're giving it your best no matter who the character is. So I think it's a really cool podcast you should check out. We just did an episode on War for Planet of the Apes where we go into the whole Planet of the Apes series. Again, if you're the kind of nerd who likes 80s toys and cartoons, you might be a Planet of the Apes nerd. That'd be a fun episode for you to check out.
And Barry's pretty cool too.
Yeah, Barry's awesome. I like him a lot.
Okay, well, I remembered to write a poem this time because we said we were going to end these on the poems that sound sort of like the poems that the Spectral Knights have to read to use their powers.
Very good.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
They shan't be touched, thy lyric and rhyme, but revelries must halt, for 'tis hammer time.
God damn you. A little license plate humor here. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. Check us out next time. Bye. So long.